Hey YouTube, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back with another exciting video from the TST garage. And behind me I have our 2024 Kawasaki Ninja 500, and in this video I will be showing you how to install our TST LED rear pod turn signal kit for the Ninja 500. Now it is important to note that the connectors used in this video will differ depending on the model that you have. All SE models of the Ninja 500, so the base SE, the KRT SE, and the 40th anniversary SE all use LED turn signals, which requires a different harness converter. On our product page for this bundle, we do have a drop down where you can select your model that will ensure that you get the appropriate plug and play harness converter for your application. And if you don't have an SE model, pretty basic, you have the incandescent bulbs, the old style turn signals, we have a plug and play converter for you as well. But our TST LED pod turn signal bundle does include the converters of your choice, a pod signal mounting kit to mount the signals to your license plate, and of course the signal choice of your choosing. And the installation process we are about to show can be used whether you're opting for our high mount system or our low mount fender eliminator. I don't know if you could see it on camera right now, but we do have both options actually installed on the bike. And the overall assembly of the signals onto the license plate bracket like this will be exactly the same whether you have the high mount or the low mount option. The only thing that will differ is the routing of the wires. So we will begin this process by installing the signals onto your license plate bracket, showing you a very general methodology that we will use to mount these signals to the license plate bracket. And then when it comes to actually installing them on the bike, obviously that will differ depending on the bracket that you chose, but we will show best practices for both options. So let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty of it. We do have our adjustable fender eliminator bracket here. This is a CNC machine piece of aluminum, anodized black. All the hardware is included. This is an adjustable kit. And if we take this kit and look at it from afar, you can see that there isn't a place for turn signals to be mounted. But as I mentioned, when you purchase our rear pod turn signal bundle, it will include all of the components needed, including these 90-degree brackets, which you get two of. And one side is slotted a little bit longer and the other side is shorter with just a punched out hole. And that hole is actually the perfect size for all of our LED pod turn signals and most aftermarket turn signals. You can see here the stud of the signal goes right through it with no issues. So the best choice that we have and the best option that I always recommend depends on the signals that you choose. If you are going with our signals, this is a surefire way to get these installed. If you have other aftermarket options, you may have to add in an additional spacer or an additional washer, I should say. So if we're looking at this kit, you can see here I do have the 90-degree bracket, and we will go ahead and take our turn signals. And the idea here is to take one of the bolts included in our pod turn signal kit, feed the washer through it, through the front of the bracket, through the 90-degree bracket for the turn signals, and then include another washer and the locking nut. That will effectively secure this 90-degree bracket to your license plate frame, or your license plate bracket, I should say. And then you can feed these signals through it and call it a day. However, we don't just use fender eliminators with no license plates, so we do understand that. What you will need to do in this case is grab a license plate that you will be using. This is just for examples. And the same process will be followed, so we will take a washer and a bolt, place it through the license plate, and then through the bracket, the fender eliminator bracket and the 90-degree bracket. And then we will take another washer and the locking nut and secure them in place. And you can see here that the hardware from our pod turn signal kit will actually secure your plate in place if you are opting for this setup. Now, this will effectively leave you with two spare washers. And the reason why we include these extra washers is because we do understand that some signal studs are a little bit longer than others. You can see here both of our BL6 and our Quadrix signals have the same length stud and the same diameter, so that's not an issue. But if you are using another aftermarket turn signal, not one of ours, you may have interference issues. So if you are experiencing that, you can actually just stack another washer on the front of the assembly, and that will space off the bolt just enough to where you should have enough wiggle room to feed the signal stud through the bracket, through the 90-degree bracket, and then lock it in place. Now, what we are going to do at this point is actually install some signals onto this bracket system using the process that we just showed. So we will go ahead and prep our turn signals by removing the included nut and one of the washers. Most of our turn signals only have one washer. Our BL6s are an exception to that. We do include a crush washer and then just a stationary flat washer or standard flat washer. So we will feed the wiring through the bracket, and then we will feed the crush washer and the locking nut. And you can see here when we do that, we have effectively mounted our turn signal to your plate, and obviously this 90-degree bracket at this point can spin around quite a bit and you can angle it. That is solely your choice at whichever angle you'd prefer this to be locked in at. And once you have your desired angle, you can actually lock the hardware in place and be left with a very clean and elegant solution. We will repeat those steps on the opposite side. Go ahead and install our bolt and washer first to secure the plate to the bracket. Then take our 90-degree bracket, washer, and locking nut. And then we will grab our other turn signal and repeat those steps that we performed on the opposite side. Just like that, we now have turn signals installed on our fender eliminator. Let me go ahead and tighten these down, just hand tighten. And you can go ahead and actually mount this entire assembly to the bike in either configuration, which is high mount or low mount. Now, when it comes to connecting this and routing the wires, if you have our low mount bracket, you do know that we include a steel template to drill out the holes for mounting your fender eliminator to your bike. In the center of that bracket is a small hole, and that hole is designed to feed a license plate light wire through so that you can connect it and illuminate your plate. However, for the Ninja 500 at this time of filming in mid of 2024, we do not have an integrated taillight system for this bike just yet, so we understand you may need turn signals. We have actually modified these brackets for a slightly larger hole in the center. Now you have a 5/16 hole, or you would drill out to a 5/16 on your undertail. The hole would already be there. And that will allow you to actually route two sets of turn signal wires, or a set of turn signal wires, and a license plate light. So if the bike wasn't here, you would imagine that it would go something like this. Feed the wires through the bracket, and then on the internal side of the bike, you would go ahead and use our harness converters and connect them bullet to bullet connector and then to your OEM turn signal connections. So you can see here, it really does make it a very, very clean assembly. Now, if you are going with our high mount bracket, you do know that there is already a pre-drilled hole on the undertail closeout. And if you are not using any lighting equipment, including a license plate light or turn signals, you would use the countersunk screw to plug that hole and have a very clean assembly. But if you do need some sort of lighting equipment, including turn signals and a potential license plate light, that third hole on the undertail closeout can be opened and exposed, and you can route the wires through there and have no issues connecting it on the bike side of the wiring harness. So at this point, we're actually going to go ahead. I'm going to show you the routing on the bike of both setups for the low mount and the high mount, give you an overall idea of how these will route and how you can route your wires internally so that they're not in the way and just flopping around. And that should get you ready to ride and legal in those areas where you are riding on the road. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the bike and we'll take care of the rest. So as you can see here, we do have both fender eliminator options mounted to the bike, and using the process I showed on the table, I have successfully installed and mounted our signals onto the fender eliminator brackets. Now, if you do need hardware specifications for this or tool specifications, 4mm hex key, Allen key hex bit up top for the bolt, and then we have a 10mm nut on the back for the pod signal to license plate mounting kit. And then as far as the nut securing our LED pod turn signals, that is a 13mm nut that goes into the threaded boss on our turn signal offerings. So if you're working in the high mount system, you already have this assembled. Imagine you have your plate already mounted. You will now go ahead and this third hole right in the center of the closeout. Normally that is blocked off if you are not using any sort of lighting equipment. In this case, that is not the situation. So we will go ahead and route our wires for our turn signals through the closeout. Just like that. We have all 3 wires, and it is a little bit of a tight squeeze. We did that intentionally as a larger hole would allow more debris and water to get into your underseat compartment. So we made the hole a little bit on the smaller side just to allow enough space to route some wires. Now, if we go with the low mount setup, you can see here we do already have a hole drilled out from the sub tray, and that is the hole that I showed on the template that we include for the low mount system. But if you are only using a license plate light and not signals, and now you want to introduce signals, we will instruct you to use a 5/16 drill bit as opposed to the 3/16 drill bit we told you to use for just a license plate light. But the methodology is still the same. You will go ahead and at this point snake your wires through the hole in the sub tray, and now we will go ahead and give you an up top view showing you what this looks like. So with the wires coming through the sub tray into the underseat compartment, you can see here we have our low mount turn signals and we have our high mount wires right here. At this point, depending on which option you go with and which model motorcycle you have, you would go ahead and use our plug and play harness converters to connect your wires to the bike's OEM harness without having to cut or splice wires. So in this case, we go black to black and yellow to yellow. And now on this little Ninja 500, we do know that this panel right here does kind of get in the way and block a lot of your visuals and a lot of your access to your wiring. These wire converters are long enough to where you can snake them along the right side of the bike underneath and then grab them on the back side like so. And you do have your OEM turn signal connectors located in this little boot here. You have a black connector and a gray connector. So you would go ahead and connect our harness converters to your appropriate turn signal plug and then go ahead and test your equipment. Now we should have a functional turn signal, which we do. You can see here it is flashing against my hand. And before we button this all up, we always recommend isolating the bullet connector covers with electrical tape. And we've shown that in several videos. I won't go over that in this one, but one by one, isolate each of these rubber sleeves over the bullet connector using electrical tape to provide an added sense of security. Now, if you're in the high mount setup and you have an SE model, your harness converter will have a much larger connector on it. Same overall process, just a different connector type. And this is exactly why we connect the harness converters once the wires from the turn signal are actually in the bike. When they are outside, trying to fit a large connector like this through the holes in the closeout or your low mount will be very difficult. So in this case, we'll go ahead and connect. Now on our Quadrix signals, we do have a blue wire for a running light function. If you wish to do that, you can introduce a running light function to these signals. In this case, we will not be doing it, but we have black to brown and yellow to red. We will isolate these connectors, and always isolate your bullet connectors before powering on your bike and testing the circuit, because if they are exposed and come into contact with one another, you will blow a fuse. And then you're going to call our customer support or email us and say that you have defective signals when in fact you just blew a little fuse. Now, we cannot test this connection because this is not an SE model, but at this point you would go ahead, connect it to the bike side wiring harness and test your connection. Make sure you are connecting to the appropriate turn signal connector on the bike side of the harness. You don't want to signal left and have your right turn signal flashing, or vice versa. And then once all that is done and you have successfully isolated these bullet connectors and the sleeves, you can just tuck your wiring in any of these several wiring channels that they have in the undertail. You can see by doing something like that, it's very clean, out of the way, doesn't take up much space, and you still have complete functionality of turn signals on your motorcycle. And as you can see, we've gone ahead and removed the high mount system. We have our low mount bracket installed with our LED pod turn signals, and you have a super clean, uniform look, completely functional, and best of all, it was all plug and play. If you like this kit, you want to see more, see what other signal options we have or what other products we have for the Ninja 500, be sure to stop by our website, tstindustries.com. The link to our TST LED rear pod turn signal kit for this bike can be found in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you just want to say hey, feel free to do so in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we've got going on. And lastly, be sure to stop by our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all username TST Industries. For now, this has been Mark from the TST Garage. We will catch you next time.